Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to another celebrating Superman edition of Missing Frames. I am your host, Shawn Eastridge. Normally on Missing Frames, we watch all of the movies we should have seen by this point in our lives, but you know better than that. You know I am a massive Superman fan, so the majority of episodes I've released this year have not been actual Missing Frames episodes, but really just an excuse for me to celebrate my love of Superman by interviewing all of my favorite writers, artists, actors, anyone I can talk to who is involved with making this incredible character as awesome as he is. I've been talking to them. And it's all because I was just thrilled about James Gunn's new movie. It's still in theaters, but not for much longer. So make sure you go check it out while you still can. And, you'll be able to watch it at home, but still go to the movie theater. Be a good sport. Be a good sport. But anyway, I've spoken with amazing super people like Mark Waid, Jason Aaron, Dan Jurgens, Philip Kennedy Johnson. In my last episode, I even had Ma Kent herself, Neva Howell, on the show to talk about her role in James's new film. And that's barely the tip of the iceberg. There are so many more interviews available for you to listen to literally right now. So make sure to check them out. If you like what you're hearing, feel free to leave a review. You can even share these episodes with your super friends. I would greatly appreciate it. So in today's episode, I'm talking with none other than the Superman group editor for DC Comics, Paul Kaminski. This is the guy who is overseeing pretty much every single super book on the shelves. Not all of them, but pretty much all of them. He works with writers to craft story ideas. He makes sure everything gets out on time, and he makes sure to release as many Superman books as possible to ensure that DC gets all of my money all of the time. And you know what the worst part is? I don't even care. They've got so many amazing Superman comics out right now. They can have my money. I'll give it to them willingly. What is wrong with me? But Paul, he's awesome. And he so clearly loves the character, which is just great to hear. It's just nice to know that the people making Superman stories right now love the character. So we discuss why Superman is essentially the designated driver of the DC universe. If that doesn't make sense now, it will make sense when you listen. We talk about what it's like overseeing multiple Superman books, that responsibility. We talk about our reactions to James Gunn's film. And of course, we talk about all of the exciting things Paul and his team have in store for Superman fans throughout the rest of the year. And that includes the DCKO initiative. And we even get some teases on things beyond that. What kind of teases, you ask? You will just have to listen to the episode to find out. But seriously, I had such a great time with Paul. Huge thanks to him for hanging out. Let's go ahead and celebrate Superman with Paul Kaminski.
Now available to own on video cassette.
Paul, this must be an insane year for you, because how long have you been editing Superman specifically?
Well, I've been at DC now. This is my 10th year. So I've been here 10 years and a couple of months.
Congratulations to you.
Thanks. I started in the Super Group. I came in as an associate editor. So I was working on some Superman titles back then. And then I solo edited the Super line for just a hot minute right before Brian Michael Bendis came on. And then I was sort of out in the woods. I was in the Justice League group for a while, and then the Batman group for a while. And that was cool because it allowed me to work on a lot of properties. In fact, at DC, I've had the honor actually of editing most of the core cast at this point. So I got to run on Wonder Woman and Detective and all those things. Not the core Batman, but in and around the world of Gotham. But that allowed me inevitably, through circumstance and just good timing, to be back with the Super title. So I've been group editor of the Superman books now since the top of 2022. And it's exactly where I wanted to be, because I love Superman. I love Superman so much. And that's when I had to leave Superman, I was really sad, because I felt that I hadn't really done everything I wanted to do with the character I worked on all the Dan Jurgens Rebirth stuff.
I love that. Some of my favorite stuff.
Yeah, we had a good time, and then I worked on some of the Tomasi Gleason stuff right at the end there before I left the super office. But I always felt like I had unfinished business, so it was really nice to come back and actually this time be able to chart the course. Because when I started as an associate, I wasn't really charting any course. I was sort of following what my direct reports were doing with the character, and this allowed me to be like, okay, here's kind of what I like. I like this, I like that, and I was able to implement them. So it was I tell you, I was very happy when that happened, and that continues. Before the call we were talking. I feel very creatively fulfilled right now. I'm in a really good place with the books. I feel great about all the stuff I work on. So it's a really fun time to be working on these comics, and especially now when everybody is talking about Superman again.
Yes.
That doesn't always happen, you know.
No, it doesn't. Well, first of all, it comes through in the works. It delights me because, we've never met before. This is my first time meeting you, but I'm obviously a huge Superman fan. I've been reading all these books, and what's clear is you're the right man for the job, which makes me so happy that you're the one doing it, that you clearly love this so much. That as a fan fills me with so much joy because you want to feel like the people behind the scenes are genuinely passionate and happy about it. But like you said, this year in particular, 2022, I feel like, was that when James and Peter took over? Because I feel like that was where you started to feel there was a shift and it was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. And then not long after, the announcement came that James was going to be writing and then directing Superman, a new Superman film. So a lot of that, I feel like it was not long after that, 2022, 2023. So it's almost like you jumped on right at the point where this craziness was just starting to kick off. And now obviously it's crested with the release of the film. But is that timing right?
Maybe somewhere around there. I mean, we're pretty disconnected, DC Comics, from some of those inner workings of how the theatrical stuff gets assembled. But we have had since a lot of direct conversation with Safran and the team about the characters just in general. And what we found was that their instincts were good. They had the right heads on their shoulders, and it was nice to know we had one of us on the inside this time with Tom King, because however you feel about Tom as a writer, he knows these characters and has been at it for a long time, and so it was good.
I love him as a writer. He's just a terrible person. No, I'm kidding. I love Tom. I had Tom on the show, and it was an absolute blast.
Yeah, I love Tom too. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow is one of the more definitive statements on a character at DC, especially in the Superman line, that I can think of. Right? It's kind of everything you wanted out of that project, because it gave direction to a character that can often feel like an afterthought, even though she's definitely not, but it gave her so much more distinct personality. And so, yeah, Tom is very gifted. So it was nice to know that we had a guy on the inside this time, right? Tom was in there, and Tom could at least tell him, no, you can't do this. Obviously, we don't really know James Gunn personally. At least I don't. Jim Lee does a little bit because they grew up in the same town. They're about the same age, but
and there's a legend that they probably saw Superman in the same theater.
So we're told.
Superman, the Donner Superman.
Yeah, and he's clearly a comic fan, right? But, you never really know. With us, it's just like the Hollywood people and the comic book people, there sometimes feels like there's a divide. And so you never really can quite tell. But obviously there was no need to fear, because James Gunn clearly is a comic book person.
Yes.
Through and through. Like, that stuff is in his blood. But we knew that the studio instincts were going to be good because they had comic people involved. And then, I don't know if it was around that time or not, but it was when I joined to be the group editor to sort of lead the super line in that way. It was at a time where Clark had been away for a while. In Action Comics, Philip Kennedy Johnson was telling a great story with the War World stuff and all of that. But Clark was away, dressed as a gladiator and doing gladiatorial things. And there wasn't a Superman title. For the first time in a really long time, there actually wasn't a Superman title. There was Superman, Son of Kal-El, which was the swap for the Superman title at that time, but no just Superman title. So it was a weird time to come in. But so in a lot of ways, I was lucky because I was the guy who got to come in and say, all these things are great, but let's see if we can have the iconic Superman on the page, and which does not take a genius to recommend, by the way. I just have impeccable timing there because I was able to say it at the right
You can
moment.
take the credit and say like, I mean, I am kind of a genius. I mean,
well, yeah.
just run with it. Run with it.
Well, I appreciate that, but it wasn't anything groundbreaking to say we should go back to basics. But what we did was we tried to put a fresh coat of paint on it. So the opposite of what we wanted to do was nostalgia. Like, that is not, to me, nostalgia is, it can be fun and stuff in small doses, but if you start to get addicted to that, it's like Ketracel White or something in the Star Trek world. You find yourself not being able to live without it. So what we did was I took the approach that Mark and I did with World's Finest, which was, okay, take the kind of core of this and then put a really nice coat of paint, fresh, modern coat of paint on it. So that's when Josh Williamson came aboard and Jamal Campbell came aboard. Josh Williamson, very punchy, kind of modern writer. He and I are both big fans of the animated series, and so we were able to look at the line and go, well, actually, that's how you do it. The animated series is how you do it, the Bruce Timm one, because what they did was they took the best of George Reeves and Christopher Reeve and the 90s stuff and Silver Age and all that, and they kind of put in a blender and came out in this one very sleek looking package. So that's what we tried to do. We tried to channel the animated series in that way. And I hope we were successful. I was really happy to see on the wall when James Gunn was posting about working on the thing. I was happy to see amongst his issues on the wall there was the Superman 1 that Josh and Jamal did.
Oh, it's such a great cover.
I was happy to see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's a long way of saying I think our instincts were aligned with the studio in that way, because they kind of did the same thing, although they went a little more comic booky in some ways than even we did in the comics, right. Actually.
They went a little more old school for sure.
Which is great.
The movie has like a crazy Silver Age vibe.
It really does. I was shocked, to be honest. I was shocked that they did that because I guess in my head, there's so many suits that would be standing in the way of something like that I just couldn't believe the audacity of that choice in a good way. Like, wow, you're not embarrassed to be a comic book movie at all.
Yes.
I'm reading a lot of Legion of Superheroes right now, and that series to me is at its best when everyone is calling each other by their silly names and they're doing these wacky things, and then you put the drama in there, right? But like, that is Legion of Superheroes, like the Paul Levitz, Keith Giffen era of that book is not ashamed to be a superhero comic. And then you read other eras that are a little embarrassed by it. Yes, and you suddenly see it start to not work as well.
It is funny how that works. Like, and this is, I think, part of why Donner's film was so brilliant is, early on when they were writing that script and developing the film, it was more kind of a parody and sort of like, this is kind of silly, isn't it? And Donner recognized like, no, if we do that, the whole thing falls apart. We've got to, at the core of it, respect it. And you feel it when you watch or read or consume these art forms that are not treating the stuff respectfully. You feel it. And it does, like you said, it falls apart. It doesn't work.
I've watched superhero movies, I should say. I've watched superhero films where I walked out of the theater going, I don't think the director liked this character.
Yeah.
And it kind of made me feel bad, actually.
Yes. Yeah.
So I was happy to see a director who clearly liked the character. And Corn Sweat, my God, that guy.
Perfect.
No notes. Amazing. And Brosnahan, too. Lois Lane was pitch perfect, too.
Yeah, everyone in that movie is great. It's and talking about just the more outlandish, comic booky, crazy stuff that you would never expect to see in a mainstream 2025 superhero movie. I was telling a friend, I was like, the second time I saw Superman, the first time I was super overwhelmed, but there was a moment, the second time I watched it, it's when they're in the pocket universe and Superman is being sucked into the black hole. And he as Krypto is flying up to him, he's like, oh, but it's a black hole, Krypto. We'll never make it. Like, we got to get out of here. And totally unprompted, totally unexpected, I started to get a little choked up and a little teary eyed. And I realized I was like, what the hell is happening to me? Like, I've broken. But what it was is that realization of like, I never thought I would see a Superman movie where that is a line in the movie. Like Krypto, like, we gotta come here, boy. You gotta help me out. Like and that just hit me. And like, for whatever reason, my brain wasn't ready for it. So full raw emotional reaction to that moment. But it's like, it's so good.
Yeah, it doesn't. I saw some review somewhere. Maybe it was just from somebody, some creator who was talking about it, that said, I really like a movie that doesn't treat me like an idiot, or a comic book movie that doesn't treat me like an idiot or treat the audience like an idiot. And what they meant by that, I don't remember who it was, so I apologize, whoever it was. But what they meant by that was that Superman movie, there's a lot of plot that they ask you to just go along with and to understand. In fact, it goes against a lot of what I was taught about editorial, because I was taught by some people who were like, well, you really got to beat people over the head with this stuff and set it up properly and all that. And I think to a degree that's more often than not true.
It's not a bad approach. Yeah.
But there's also an approach where Lex Luthor is just walking around and then suddenly he starts talking about a pocket universe, and you can either go, what? Or, yeah, I guess I kind of understand what that is, right? Like
pocket universe with angry monkey internet bots writing rage 24/7 and on the internet. Like at a certain, like it's the audacity of just embracing it fully. But
right.
at the core of it, you know what it is. It's like you can go zany. You can go a little zany. The difference is, like you said, you can tell when the person behind the whole enterprise loves what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's the difference is, I guess an example of a zany comic book movie, like the Schumacher Batman movies, which are constantly panned. And I don't know that Schumacher was necessarily a big Batman fan. And you can kind of tell, I think that's why people were not fans of those movies. But I think with something like this, you give a little bit more leeway and you're willing to go there when you sense maybe the purity of what's going on and what's happening and the intention behind it.
Yeah, much like every artist draws themselves on the page. Like whenever you meet one of your favorite artists, you're like, "Boy, you look a little like every drawing you've ever done." You can tell the same with a director and their approach to these characters, especially characters who've been around for a long time. Like you look at Schumacher, and by the way, I love Batman Forever because I was at the right age.
Yes,
for that.
No joke. I've said this on the record. I'll say it again. Batman Forever, of those 4 Burton Schumacher movies, it's my favorite. And I think it's the only one that actually tries to look at who Bruce Wayne is as a character, as opposed to just, he's just Batman, and let's pay attention to Jack Nicholson instead. So
sure.
I always love that. You're like, wait, Shawn, pull it back. I wasn't ready to go that far.
Well, no, I mean, I don't know actually if I would go that far, but what I mean by that is you could tell he's a fan of 66.
Yes.
And so there's no hiding that, right? When the director really feels strongly about what they think a character is, like you can tell immediately. So much like an artist draws themselves in, you're drawing your own influences, or writing rather your own influences, or directing your own influences into what you do. And so, yeah, I think this was what James Gunn made, and everybody who helped make it, is a testament to comic books as a storytelling medium and a love letter to the franchise in ways that I was shocked by and just overjoyed. I was like, man, it's so nice to see somebody who is not afraid to make a comic book movie.
Yeah, but also not ashamed of Superman as a character, because I think maybe with some approaches to Superman, you try to say like, well, it's a little corny, let's steer away from that, or I don't believe like a guy that powerful can be that good, and let's go in this direction and maybe deconstruct it a little bit. And I think if you're going that route, you're missing the point, and you're missing what makes that character special. So to so fully like to have this big movie so fully embrace it and say, yeah, he is a little bit corny, he is a little bit goofy, he is kind of a dweeb, that's all part of who Superman is, and that's what makes him so special. That's very, very exciting. And especially the idea of like, let's have this amazing, powerful being be a good, kind person. As sad as it is, it feels revolutionary right now to have that be so prominent. This powerful being is like, it's just a good person. Weird that we need that as an example these days.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're a reflection of our times, right? So, but I think it was somebody also drew the comparison online to like Ted Lasso or somebody like that, where you look at that and you're like, it doesn't mean that character can't have flaws, but that character can be genuinely kind and have it not read flat if you approach it with the right angle. So I thought
Yes.
James Gunn did that. I was really impressed. I was baffled, because I was like, my first thought was like, how's the public going to react to this?
Yes.
I really didn't know leaving that thing, because I watched it with a lot of Superman fans, right? So it's one thing to do that, and there's one thing to be like, how is John Q. Driveway going to digest this? And they did, and that was very heartening to see.
Yes, very much so. Do you what is your earliest memory of the character of Superman? Like, do you have a specific memory, or is it something like you've always loved this character, always known this character, or can you pinpoint a moment where you were like, wait a second, I think I might be a fan of this guy?
Yeah, my first graphic novel was The Death of Superman, so I got that very first printing of that.
How old are you?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, I have a memory of buying Superman. I forget what issue it is actually. It's the cover with Cyborg Superman on the cover where he's holding the American flag. So what's that, 94?
Something like
so
that, I think.
must have been 9, 10. But my memories are primarily of the film. I had a copy of Superman 3 on VHS that I very distinct. That movie made an impression on me. And then I watched the George Reeves show with my dad a lot. And that was another marker for me. Although it's funny because the George Reeves show has very little to do seemingly with the Christopher Reeve films.
Yeah.
Just because like Superman is so dashing in that, or I should say Clark Kent is so dashing in that. He is not the bumbling figure we see in other media.
No, there almost is no. It's funny, I've gone back and watched the George Reeves, and there are moments in the show where he's just not even wearing the glasses, and they're like, "Wow, Clark!" And they're like, "I'm like, so wait, what is?" So there is no disguise. He's not even pretending. That's George Reeves. That's George Reeves Superman.
But it's fine because it works with a wink and a nod. He's got a smile
Yes.
that could, just like Corn Sweat and Christopher Reeve and even Brandon Routh, I would argue to an extent. Like there's a smile there that can sell a lot. And when George Reeves, when he's winking at you, you're like, yeah, you know what?
Fine.
It's fine.
I take it.
It's fine. But it's funny because the cartoon really plays Clark that way. He's not bumbling at all. He is more like George Reeves, where he's, kind of dapper.
Yep.
Kind of always looks like $1 million. Yeah, I don't know. There's something to both approaches, actually. I'm not sure which one I like more.
I was going to ask, like, is there a preference? Because I love, it is no secret to anybody who knows me that I adore the Donner film, but I can understand the frustration of a Clark Kent that is such a parody and so goofy that it's like, but who, like, that's not even a real person, really. So there is a part of me that almost feels like, oh, can we pull it back a little bit and maybe find that balance? I don't know if you watched Superman and Lois. I thought Tyler Hoechlin did a really great job doing the Clark and the Superman thing.
Yeah, and My Adventures with Superman.
Yes, yeah.
Cartoon like that is a good example too, where he walks that line where he's like sort of lovable and by being lovable therefore feels kind of cuddly and approachable, but he's not like knocking stuff over. Like clearly like he's like he's built like a football player. That's where we kind of play him in the comics now. He's sort of like he's kind of a goofball, but he's like a handsome goofball, so like,
well, it's also like currently in the comics, he doesn't so much of, and this applies to My Adventures with Superman as well, but so much I think of the most mainstream popular view of Superman is, oh, nobody knows who he is. And like that's his secret identity. So in the current run, a lot of the people around him know who he is. Lois, they're married, they have kids, like they know who he is. So I think a lot of that, it allows for a little bit more flexibility. I think when the people closest to him are in on the joke, he doesn't have to pretend as hard to do that. And it's fun. And I thought that was a really interesting, cool take that James had, like right from the get-go, to be like, oh, they're together. She knows. Like, it's like, I just see the audience who somehow has missed every single trailer and commercial being like, what? They're making out? What's happening? Like, I don't know what to believe.
I was relieved.
Yeah, because you lose. I mean, it's fun, and you love that kind of like, is she going to find out? But then you realize we've had almost 100 years of that interpretation on the big screen. And that's the one we're most used to. So to go that route, you automatically, it's like, well, we don't have to do all the building of this relationship, and we don't have to do the like, how does she not know he's Clark? It's like, we don't have to think about any of that. We're just diving right into this.
Yeah, there's plenty of drama in a marriage. I tend to fall in the camp of like, some people really don't like, some people work in comics really don't like getting characters together or marrying them and stuff. And I can see that because there is an element of like it does rob a little bit of the will they, won't they.
Yeah, it's the Cheers thing.
It's a Cheers thing. Or I would look at like The Office and you'd say like, okay,
Yes,
well,
yeah.
Jim and Pam are going to get, I'm sorry, spoilers, everybody. Jim and Pam are going to get together, obviously, but like it's a little more compelling when you're not quite sure or if it's just on the tip of their tongue. Like, so I do understand that for dramatic purposes, but at this point, I'm like, in this day and age, like it's fine. Like there's still drama there. And you know what? I would point, like, we've been finding that drama now for decades with these characters. You look back on the Jeff Loeb, Joe Kelly stuff in the early 2000s, and they were finding drama there. They were playing with that Lois and Clark dynamic, and there was, they would never quite go and tease like a breakup or something, but like there's drama in a marriage, and if you're, clever at it, you can treat that the same way as there being drama with characters with a lot of power. Because one of the things we hear a lot is that it's hard to write Superman because he's got so much power. And yeah, I guess, I don't know, like, sure, like that could be hard for some people, but I don't know. It's just about finding drama in a different way, I guess.
Yeah, and also, I mean, like, there are things you can play with. You can tone down the powers. You can mess like, that's kind of what Byrne in the Triangle era, like Jurgens and that whole team did during the '90s. Is like, you can't quite push the moon out of orbit and create a solar eclipse, but he's still pretty powerful. He can get beat up a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt the same way about, like, I never bought into that mindset of he's too powerful, there's nothing you can do with it. But I would even argue, I think the Rebirth run that Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason did, and Dan Jurgens, and then Superman and Lois the TV show, I think are the perfect examples of how you can tell compelling stories even with a quote unquote domesticated version of Superman. There's drama to be found. There are great stories to be found. I would even say, like, I think the Rebirth run might be my favorite Superman run, and can't say I've read them all, but I've got to say, like, I think that dynamic is just having a kid, bringing a kid into that was so brilliant. And I think it provides just a level of emotion that feels so in tune with Superman. Because I think a lot of people see Superman, it's like he's kind of like the dad. He's gonna make sure, like, you're gonna get home okay, right? He's the designated driver. So it kind of makes sense that the next step in his character would be like, have a kid, and like, what is it actually like to see Superman as a dad and developing a father-son relationship? I'm a dad now, so like it hits me on a whole different level. So I think it works.
Yeah.
And I think I'm old enough now that Superman has always been my favorite. I understood the sort of rebellious impulse to love Batman and be like, Superman sucks because Batman's a badass, but I never felt that way. But even in my older age, I feel like even more secure in accepting Superman as, like, he's my guy. I just love that vibe, and I love that feeling of like, this guy takes care of you.
Yeah, he feels like a friend, and that's a great way to put it, like a designated driver, but not like a designated driver who's like pissed about it, like a designated driver who's like
he's
along and having fun. Yeah,
yes.
he's like,
he's just like, are you okay? Am I like,
yeah.
Okay, give me your keys, Paul. Give me your keys. Like, we're gonna, like, I'll get you home. Don't worry. He's not gonna judge you.
And there's a respect inherent to that, and that's ultimately Superman at his core. He respects you enough to know that given the tools, you will do the right thing. So I think that that's the distinction there. And people write him like one of the things that always annoys me with some people's take on Superman is when he's written like a school principal. And it's not a finger waggy thing. It's more of what you're saying. It's a designated driver. It's somebody who's there with you with the hand on the shoulder. Like, don't worry, I'm here to help. We're going to get through this. And we might even have like fun with it. Like, like, we can have fun. Like, this is going to be great. I'll put on your favorite song in the car. Like, it's going to be awesome. Like,
but he's also, he's the guy, I don't drink. So I've been the designated driver. I don't know how many times I've had somebody who I am designated driving home, and they're just like, "Oh, Shawn, I'm so sorry. Like, I just, you must hate me." And I'm like, "I don't hate you. Like, you're okay." And I just feel like that's Superman. Like the guy sitting next to him, and the vibe he gives is not, like you said, not judgmental. It's not the principal pointing the finger. It's like the person may be a mess, but I think that person who's a mess looks at Clark, looks at Superman, and says, "I want to live up to what that guy thinks of me." I'm not saying these people are looking at me saying that and saying like, "God, Shawn, you're so amazing." I think that's how people look at Superman. I think that's how he inspires them, is not by judging, but by sheer action and just showing the example, showing the way. People look at that and say, "You know what, maybe tomorrow I'll have a few less drinks and I'll be a little bit less of a mess."
Sure,
So
sure.
I'm a
But
little more coherent.
but that friendship thing, that respect, that's contagious, and I think that that's a nice lesson to take from Superman, is that even though he's fictional, like you can actually learn something from a character like that, and feel like you've walked away with something of value in your life. When I was a kid, I was a diehard sort of Marvel Zombie X-Men fan, and I always felt like after reading X-Men, I walked away with a better handle on like acceptance and
Mm.
racism and all those factors and things that play into the morality play of the X-Men. But with Superman, it's funny, even though I was on the playground like waving X-Men comics in the air like a preacher on Sunday, I would never say a bad word about Superman, because why would I? Like, it would
Yes.
never even have occurred to me to say a bad word about Superman. Like, it's just, there's something about him that, like you said, feels like a friend, and felt like I could, if I could be kind like him, then maybe I would be a slightly better person. You know, something I just makes me feel better to have him around looking at me. That's why I'm always surrounded by Superman statues and stuff, and keep me honest,
Yeah.
you know?
No, it's true. And when you got involved in comics and you got involved in editing, you talk a little bit about like, Superman is kind of where it feels like that's the guy, that's who you want to be with, and that's what you're enjoying so much right now. Like, what was the journey that got you there? Like, were you kind of leaning into that direction and sort of saying to everyone who would listen, like, "Hey, something opens up with Superman. I'm just saying, I would like to, like, give me a little bit of background on like how you got into this."
Sure, yeah. When I was a kid, I was just consuming every comic book I could and making my own. I had a whole comic book company that I would. My mom, bless her, was photocopying for me at school, and I was selling subscriptions on the playground.
That's
And
great.
they were all original characters, and I had
I was going to ask,
crossovers.
was it my stories when I was a kid were all like ripoffs of
Oh, for
movies
sure,
I'd seen, but
for sure.
original characters, kudos to you.
Well, okay, big
Original
scare
characters with the
quotes.
plot of Star Wars, but
Sure,
it's
sure,
okay.
yeah. But I had crossover, I had everything, and so I, comics. I was actually, funnily enough, I was doing exactly the same thing I'm doing now, at 9 years old. House ads, everything. And so when I was a senior in high school, I was all set to go off and become a history teacher or something, and then a representative from SVA, the School of Visual Arts in New York, came to talk at my high school, and much to my parents' wallets' dismay, I discovered there was a cartooning program, and I went, "What? I could go to school for comics?" And I wanted to go to the Joe Kubert School. My parents said I had to have a 4-year degree, and so I thought,
Mm.
well, it sucks for you then. This is an expensive school. Uh, but I did. So I went to SVA to try and learn how to be Jim. I wanted to be Jim Lee,
Mm.
and I did graduate, but I did not graduate as Jim Lee. Um, and so I thought, well, that was fun. And I did some political cartooning for a while for my local paper in New Jersey. And
Mm.
then through happenstance, I got a job in the production department at Archie Comics. And I started there Boxing Day 2007. I was doing all kinds of art corrections and stuff, and it was really rad. And then I found my way to editorial. And editorial allowed me to work with writers and artists, and to hire the artists and writers that I admired and work with them to make the comics and to craft the universe a bit more, and to be hands-on but also know where my strengths and weaknesses were. And so I have an art background, which is really helpful, but now I can hire the people who can actually execute this stuff the way it ought to be, and not the way
Right.
I felt like where my shortcomings were. So I was in licensed comics for a while. I did Sonic the Hedgehog and Mega Man for many years, and I had a blast doing that. But what I was doing was superhero comics through that lens of
Right.
Sonic and Mega Man. And then when DC moved out west, not
You were
everybody
like,
joined,
"Ayo."
and I said, "Excuse me." So yeah, I interviewed. I interviewed a couple times, and I got in on the third try and moved out west with DC Comics.
Right.
And
What was the role? Was it just assistant editor at the time?
it was associate. So there's
Okay.
in editorial, there's an assistant editor, an associate editor, an editor, a senior editor, a group editor, an executive editor, and then
Mhm.
editor in chief. So I at the time was executive editor at Archie. So I took quite a title cut to go over to DC, but that I did it knowing like this is really where I want to be.
Right.
And so I came in as an associate, which means you can edit a couple titles and then assist on others. So I was assisting on some titles, that's action. I was assisting on action. And then I was editing. I did a book called Starfire by Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Connor. I worked a little on Red Hood and Arsenal. I worked on a book with Javi Fernandez, who's doing Plug, our new event, DCKO, coming this October.
Yeah.
And he and I did a book called Doomed, which was an interesting book, but touched the Superman place a little bit because
Gotcha.
it took place with a kid who got the powers of Doomsday and sort of like a Hulk analog thing. And anyway, yeah. So then I was there at the ground floor for Rebirth and just got inundated. It was like going to school again, actually, because editorial was all trained extensively in that time by Jeff Johns. We would all sit in these rooms with Jeff and he would talk to us about how comics are made from his point of view. And we got just this incredible course. And I always felt very grateful for that because it taught me a lot in that time. And then Rebirth, we did Super Sons, and I got to do Super Sons with Jorge Jimenez and Pete Tomasi. I've actually touched every Super Sons issue, and then yeah, Super Sons was great. I did Supergirl and Superwoman was me, and boy, yeah, there's been a lot of titles, man.
I mean, what was that? 2015, 16?
Yeah, I started 2015. Rebirth was 2016, 2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, what is that?
We did Reborn.
Yeah.
My little claim to fame is that you see it sometimes on merchandise these days. It's not a claim to fame. It's the belt. Okay, during Rebirth.
Yes. Yeah.
There was a Rebirth belt. In fact, I bought this toy just because this belt is on here. So that belt was meant to, and the people can't see this, but
it's the red belt, little yellow diamond in the center,
and then it dips down a little, and this dip down bit was me trying to replicate the trunks,
right?
Because at the time we were forbidden to do the trunks, so I thought,
trunks.
I'll have the middle bit down a little so it kind of has the shape of the trunks. And I remember drawing it on the whiteboard in the Superman office at the time, and they were looking at me like, well, he seems real excited about it, so I guess we're going to go with that, but I don't get it.
So you're a trunks guy then?
Well, I am, yeah, but I'm mostly not because I have some allegiance to the trunks or anything, but because it breaks the costume up in a nice way. And
did you see you see the art, and the concept art is out now for the movie, and you just look at that and you're like, thank God they went with those trunks.
I mean, not that it looked bad or anything, but it just, I don't know. I like the way the color breaks up on the trunks. And we had this thing, it just annoys me to this day looking back at it, because when pre-52 or pre-New 52 Superman comes back in Rebirth, that version of Clark has blue boots, and it drives me insane. Like, it's not because I don't think anyone should have blue boots. It's just because I like the way the colors balance.
Yes. It is so, and you see, but like, I think, like, we're joking about the trunks, but I think if I were to show somebody an image of David Corenswet's final costume, a shot from that movie, and put it next to that concept art, I think 9 out of 10 people, no matter what level of nerddom they have, would be like, oh, the trunks. And part of it is just like, yes, it's programmed in your brain, but it is that color, just something about it, the design of that color, the color scheme. Without it, you feel you're like, something is off about this. But I've seen, like, again, this is somebody, I love the Rebirth design, and I've loved the costumes that don't have the trunks, but something feels right when I see the trunks.
Yeah, and it's just that color, that balance of color, ultimately, because like it's so weird, dude, that we still make comics the way we do, because like it was born out of this shortcut medium in like Depression era newspapers of how they could squeeze as much money
Right.
out of children as possible. Like basically it was just this complete thing to like save money and all this stuff. And so these basic colors that are being used are decisions that are reverberated out from a newsstand system, and they've just lasted via tradition long after the mechanism for why they were created has died out. It's a fascinating exercise.
Yeah, well,
to
I
think
mean,
about.
like, but you're a big music fan too. Like, just think about the concept of the
Oh,
album and how
sure.
irrelevant it
It's-
is in the 21st century. Like, it's like but we still cling to it. And I'm a proponent for the album as an art form, so I'm like all for that.
Right.
But in this day and age, when you can stream anything, any length of time, the fact that we are still saying, all right, but I'm going to create a 45-minute 10-song statement and release it into the world is interesting, because like comics and the way comics are being released right now, it is a design, or it is a carryover from an older
Right.
age where it was the necessity of how, like, that was the only way you could release this music.
Sure, and it refuses to die the same way
Yes.
comics refuse to die. I'm look, I don't work on any of the Absolute books. I want to make that very clear, but those things are doing very well right
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
And I look at that and I go, wow, these bloody things refuse to die. It makes me happy. It makes me really happy. And yeah, like the album, that's a wonderful observation. It's the same exact thing. And of course, it wasn't always that way either, right? Like the Beatles in a lot of ways did that.
Yep. Yes.
But it became so ingrained in us. It's just sort of, it's actually more like tradition. It's more like hanging stockings at Christmas time or something.
It really, no, absolutely. But it really is, like, I mean, and you've worked in the industry for nearly 20 years now. I'm also at the age where, like, the fact that I can say anything happened 20 years ago to me when I was a teenager is, I'm like, that's my existential crisis. It just immediately fires up this feeling in the pit of my stomach where I'm like, oh my God, what's happened? Where'd the time go? But like, you have likely seen, well, I mean, 2007, it was right before MCU, but Nolan's Batman had just started right before The Dark Knight blew everything up. But like, my guess is you've probably seen a couple moments where the comic book industry, it was like, well, I guess this is it. I guess it's all over. And
Dude,
then
people say it every year. People say it constantly, every year, without fail.
But like,
there are some years I believe them more than others, actually. But they, like I said, they keep going, man. I'm happy. I'm very happy for that. It makes me feel good. In the same way, it made me feel good to see people react to the James Gunn Superman. I'm like, yeah, okay. There's like a little sense of validation, like this thing I love so much. Like sometimes making comics can feel very solitary, not just for the creators, but for editors too, because our heads are all in what we're doing. And there are times, when you look at what you're doing and you go, man, does anyone care? 'Cause I know I care, but does anyone care? And then to get these little moments that remind you that people do care actually is really nice, because it keeps me going creatively to hear that stuff.
Well, as a fan of Superman, what's been great for me is seeing, it's different for you because this is your livelihood. This is how you you get paid. But as a fan, it's very, very similar, especially as a Superman fan. I've felt for a while, I've just been kind of wandering a wasteland, feeling like, does anybody, like, why am I the only one who seems to like recognize this guy's special? And not in the comics, but particularly as somebody who loves film. Like, I was just like, why am I not seeing what I love about this character reflected? Or like, why am I seeing kind of an embarrassed fleeing from that character, like the character, as if it's something that you need to be ashamed of. And coming back to James Gunn's movie and just the full embrace of like, let's celebrate exactly what makes this character special. What it does is, the comics may be separate from the film in general. And I think we're seeing, hopefully, and as you're saying, you're seeing a little bit more of that connection, knowing that is a genuine love from people like James that's imbuing it with a feeling of like reassurance and like, okay, we got somebody who's one of us who understands why this stuff is special. But as a fan on the outside, similar to what you're saying about like, feeling validated, it's so great for me to see this film doing well, getting a lot of praise, a lot of love, but then also like as somebody who is a collector and a consumer of all things Superman, to get to see that it's like, great, that means this movie's coming out, which means the comics are likely going to have some sort of initiative, some sort of boost to capitalize off the film's success, hopefully, and all that stuff. For me, I'm like, I'm living in heaven. And,
Yeah.
for you, it's like you're the one in charge of making it all happen. But like, how early on was that Summer of Superman like planned? Was it something that came into the fray later on, or was it something like you were like, you know what? Because usually, like, there's action and there's Superman and maybe one or two, not one-offs, but like limited series or things like that. But it's like right now, how many different
Yeah.
Superman
A
series
lot.
are like? How many series are you overseeing right now?
Yeah, there's a bunch. Yeah, that was a conscious effort, thinking that we would have a moment where the anticipation behind the film would be able to support more titles. I was never asked to do that. That was more like me looking at this going, I think if we're going to do it, now's the time. My instinct is to always expand, and that's actually not always the smartest move. Like,
Mm,
there's times when you expand too quickly and either the audience isn't there or you're attracting the wrong kind of attention. And I've been bitten by that before. So I try and be careful with that. But I knew going into this that we were going to have an opportunity, at least in the run up. I didn't actually know anything about the movie or how it would perform because I've thought things were going to perform one way in the past and also got bitten. So my whole thought
yeah.
was like, well, let's capitalize. One thing we do know is that there seems to be excitement around the idea of this. So let's do that. So we planned for an additional title. It just so happened that Dan Slott, I had been trying to get him for a few years and it kept falling through, kept falling through, kept falling through. And then suddenly I got the call like, hey, I think we might actually be able to do it now. And at the time I had already cast Action Comics. So we created a new title for Dan.
Mm.
And so I thought, well, now, okay, now's the time. So we did the Summer of Superman special, which was, okay, well, all right. So we got a third title now. Let's kick that off into make it something. And
Right.
the crypto thing was developed differently. That Ryan North book, which is excellent, by the way.
Oh my
That was
God, I love
developed.
it.
Yeah, that was developed by Katie Kubert and Sabrina Futch. And so we thought, okay, we'll roll that in. All right. And that was the case of we're like, okay, if this is continuity, there's going to be some rails. And they were like, okay. So we did that. And then Brittany Holzer, who was about to take over Action, had an idea for a Supergirl book, a new one. We hadn't had a Supergirl book in a while. And Sophie Campbell was available. And we thought, okay, there's a
Do
time.
it.
I think
Do it.
let's build a program around it. So I built this deck and we're going to do this thing. And got Mark and Dan and Josh to all kind of architect out what the shape of the thing would look like. And yeah, it's done well. It's done well. And I'm very happy to see that because, like I said, these things don't always work out. And you learn to
Yeah.
kind of temper your expectations a little. But we have Action Comics, which is telling the tales of Clark Kent as a boy in Smallville. For the first time, we're in the modern era. We're doing a proper Superboy story, and Mark Waid is writing that. And that
Oh,
came
it's
from
great.
a
So good.
conversation in San Diego Comic-Con where Mark was just like, hey, that would be my dream project. And at the time, I didn't know that that was going to be Action Comics, but it made sense, made all the sense in the world. And then so Superman Unlimited, the Dan Slott book with art by Raphael Albuquerque, is more of the Superman in the present day, where we've got this kryptonite asteroid that struck the Earth, and it's imbued. It's basically thrown off the geopolitical structure of the planet because there's all this kryptonite now on the planet. And so Superman has to react to that, and what does he do about it? And there's a new Kryptonite King and a Kryptonite Kingdom and all this stuff. And then the Superman title is in part set in the future because it deals with the bigger universe connections. And the bigger
Right.
universe connections right now are this the all-in sort of epic we're doing with Scott Snyder and this DCKO thing, and it deals with an evil version of Legion of Superheroes, which I was never a Legion fan because I just simply wasn't acquainted with it. I've become one in the last few months after reading a lot of Legion comics. And I got to tell you, the most important thing I took away from Legion of Superheroes was that Superman as a boy was able to see that whether he succeeded or failed, or lived or died, the future was going to be okay. And it was going to be okay in part because of the hope he provided for them and the inspiration. Imagine being a kid and then your friends are literally from the future and they were inspired by you. Like, that must make everything, like, Superman's whole perspective on the world is different with that in place. And it's why I think people were kind of upset when that part went away post-Crisis.
Yeah.
Because Superman was able to look at tomorrow and go, oh no, tomorrow's gonna be fine. Like, yeah, there's gonna be struggles, but tomorrow's gonna be okay. Like, we're gonna get through this. It's a designated driver thing. Like, yeah, tonight sucks, but you're gonna get through it. It's gonna be fine. That's a beautiful concept. And so what we're doing in the Superman book is we're playing with this notion of, hey, the dark side Legion, the Legion of that Darkseid created, has murdered essentially the future. And so for the first time, Superman is looking at the future going, boy, I don't know, this doesn't look good, you guys.
Yeah.
He doesn't have that same assuredness, and a lot of people are, feeling that right now in the world. So it reflects that broader cultural conversation in a way that's not so heavy-handed. And we're playing with that idea, and Superman will have a tall task ahead of him to restore hope in the future, but if anyone can do it,
I have a feeling he's going to pull through okay.
We have a plan.
There's a plan.
There's so much planning. I tell you what, we've been having so much fun.
How far ahead do you typically have to plan these arcs just to like ensure you're hitting the right release dates and all this stuff? I can't imagine.
It depends how much of
all of these different books. Like, I can't imagine.
It depends how much of a madman you want to be, but like, I love this. Like, that is where I go. I gobble it right up. So,
right.
So that's my fun. That's my happy place. Like, when I'm planning out Superman stuff with Mark and Dan and Josh, that is where I mean, aside from being with my beautiful wife and children.
Yes, please. Let's give them a shout out.
Oh, that is where I'm very happy. I'm a very happy camper. So, like, well, oftentimes what I do is first thing in the morning, I go out for a little jog in up here in the Pacific Northwest, and I just think about Superman.
I know, you have my dream job. Like, it's like, man, I remember when I was talking with Tom, he was just telling me, he's like, I got this, a call on Thanksgiving Day from an editor who should not have been calling me on Thanksgiving Day. And he's like, I need a Superman idea by Monday. And I was like, yes, it's terrible. I'm like, I agree. Nobody should be calling anyone on Thanksgiving and saying, do this work. But I was like, from my perspective as a fan, I'm like, talk about like, what? I get to think about Superman on Thanksgiving? Like, that sounds good to me.
Yeah. Doesn't always sound good to the people around you. But yeah, so anyway, to answer your question, we have planned out right now through top of 27, more or less, assuming we're all, everything's still here.
We're still
and we're
here.
All fine,
yes.
And all that, the world isn't some sort of crater or something. But no, we planned it all out. We have right now we're planning this DCKO event, and it's gonna be awesome. Scott Snyder.
Give me a little tease. We've got a little bit of a tease, and I'm sure you cannot tell me more than that. But what do we have to look forward to?
Yeah, so basically the heroes are going to be undergoing a kind of a competition in order to accrue through this competition the amount of energy it will take to combat Darkseid is the nuts and bolts of this. And I could get into the mechanics, but you know what? You don't need to know, because all you need to know is that there is
everyone's
going to be
fighting everybody.
A massive tournament, and it is going to kick ass, and there is a logical explanation for all of it, I assure you, because I had to recite it to another writer today, so I promise it makes sense. But is at the bare bones of this is you're going to see your favorite characters competing to become as powerful as Darkseid and ultimately combat his return.
Perfect.
So that's and obviously Superman is in that battle, and guess what? He probably has something very important to do in that, I would imagine. He's awful powerful, isn't he? So he is going to be very much at the heart of this story, and we're having so much fun planning that out. But afterwards, we've got this really cool stuff, which I really can't talk about. But we're going to be introducing some new characters. The super books are going to be continue to play off of each other and play in this space, and we've got a really epic story, which will have the word Reigen in it, and in that story, we're going to be basically marching toward Action 1100, which hits in this summer, and Action 1100 will be the big like boom moment. And then that starts a whole new set of stuff, which leads into the fall. And then that's when I go out for my jog again, and then text Mark Waid. And
I love how excited you. That just brings me so much joy to see how much joy it brings to you. Because as a fan, like I said, living through a period of time where it felt like the people making Superman stories weren't necessarily enamored with the character, like just to hear from you and to talk with you and see your enthusiasm is just like, man, I'm pumped because I've been enjoying all of it. But like, what is it about Superman? I've been asking everybody, what do you think it is? We've kind of talked about it. I think it's been peppered throughout this conversation, but this character has been around for 100 years. He's survived many, many obstacles to get to where he is now. What do you think it is about Superman that makes this character so lasting and special?
He is the superhero, and by that I mean he's the DNA of the whole genre to me. I learned a lot about myself in the last few years about what I like about comics. I really been starting to make a concerted effort to read like I used to when I was a kid, just consume as much as I can. And it's not that I don't like dark and gritty stuff, because I definitely read some messed up books by some very talented creators. Ice Cream Man is one of my very favorite books, and that book I've got
to. And speaking of that, isn't he's doing a Superman? There's a Kryptonian. What is it?
The Kryptonite Spectrum, which hits very soon. We put the first issue to bed, and we're working on issue 2 right now. That was
very exciting.
I was very happy for that. But anyway, so it is not that I don't like messed up stuff, but about superhero comics in general, what I realized is there is an element of the bright costumes and the joy of the superpowers and doing the fantastical that is inherent to my enjoyment of the genre. And it sounds sort of silly and obvious to say, but it's actually not that silly and obvious. There's I always point to this one panel of that John Byrne drew in one of the early issues of his Superman title, Post-Crisis, where Clark is heaving a tree out of the ground with his bare hands.
Yeah.
And I look at that and go, wow, yeah, that's it right there. It's this amazing thing that this character's doing that you can't do in real life. And there's something visceral about that. And Superman embodies everything that's visceral about that with the bright colors and the joy and the superpowers. He is at the heart of the entire genre. No matter what's going on at Marvel, no matter what else is going on in DC, no matter what's going on in these other universes, Image, whatever, Superman is he's the atom at the heart of it, the nucleus, and that's it. You either like that or you don't. Like, I'm sorry. If you don't like that, that's totally fine. But then this probably isn't for you.
You're a Beatles fan. What I told people is people would say I'm not a big Beatles fan. I'm like, oh, are you just not a fan of music in general?
Yeah, they're in a lot of ways. Yeah, they sort of set the template for pop music as it exists today. Exactly.
In
the same way.
So it's the same thing with Superman. It's like, if you like comics and superheroes, I'd hate to break it to you, but he's the guy. That's where it all started.
And by the way, nothing against people who don't like Superman. Like, I get it. Like, totally, totally fine. And by the way, like, I celebrate you. Like, go out there and do your thing. Because, like, honestly, like, if Batman is only your thing, I often tell my kids, like, hey, I talk about Batman like Bob Cratchit talks about Ebenezer Scrooge. He's like, well, now,
I like Mr. that, Scrooge. But it's not just Bob Cratchit. It's Bob Cratchit and the Muppet Christmas Carol. Yeah. It's the Kermit the Frog.
To the founder of the feast, like, like Batman keeps a roof over our heads, kids. We're all happy for Batman. but I love.
We can love them both. Superman. You can love Superman and Batman. It's okay. Yeah. And then, like, my last question: what's your personal? I'm not going to ask you to pick your favorite child of this current run and all the amazing books, but your personal favorite Superman story. Do you have one? What's the one that DC put out a great video where a bunch of creators said what their favorite was. My friends Brad and Lisa Gullickson at the Comic Book Couples Counseling podcast have been asking Superman creators, what is your go-to Superman book? If somebody's like, Paul, what's the one book I read to get a handle on this character?
Oh my God. Well,
You
that's a different
now
question.
you got to be careful now because you're working with some of these guys. So
yeah, there's a couple different answers depending on what you're trying to get across. Like if you're giving it to somebody, it's like, here's who Superman is. Well, actually, you know what? I have an interesting answer. Maybe it's not that interesting. I actually have no idea if it's interesting or not. But Miracle Monday is a novel by Elliot S. Megan that I think if you want to understand how that character ticks, that's the book. Now, I would never give that to somebody to be like, this should be your first Superman. I want you to read this novel. But if you were to give that to somebody who was interested enough to read it, you would understand, oh, that's that. Because Elliot S. Megan, he's really an unsung creator in Superman lore, because in that book, you kind of get all of the things. You get the anxiety over, hey, is it okay that a creature has this much power? Because that is often at the heart of a lot of stories by people who really actually don't either like or want to deconstruct him or something like that. And by the way, I think that is totally valid. And Elliot S. Megan addresses it. There's this wonderful scene. In fact, it's how the book starts. Jonathan Kent is having a bad dream. He's having a nightmare about his son becoming a great dictator and overlord of humanity. And that's how the book starts. Right. Oh, wow. So you go into this and you're like, oh boy, man, this is going to be a dour Superman story. And then he wakes up from his dream in a flop sweat and he goes into Clark's room, and Clark is awake because he doesn't sleep as much as humans do. Mm-hmm. And Clark is performing a science experiment on a little insect. And Jonathan, who just had this horrible nightmare about his son becoming a Mussolini character or whatever, walks over. He's like, hey, what you doing, boy? And Clark's like, nothing. I'm just like, I'm looking at this dissected insect. And he's like, uh-huh. And you could see the flop sweat.
How do you feel?
Returning, in his mind. And Clark's like, yeah, look at this. And he's like showing him the thorax and stuff. And Jonathan is like, should I get my shotgun? Like, what should I do here? And then Clark goes, yeah, this creature, I'm really, really sad. This creature died and I found it, and I want to make sure that I look and see what killed it. It's a disease of some kind. I want to see what killed it so that we could spare the other creatures the same fate. And Jonathan just goes, oh, thank God.
I love that.
But in that moment, that's who he is. Yes. Right? He's not. He wants to, he acknowledges that the world can be hard, but you can do some things maybe to make it a little better. So yeah, I'm going to put Miracle Monday on there. I'd feel disingenuous to say like, that's my favorite. Like ultimately my favorite comics are like that Ed McGuinness kind of Joe Kelly, Jeff Loeb version of the character, because that's the version that really clicked with me for the first time. But that's
great. I mean, you were saying, you're like, I don't know how interesting this is. Nobody so far I've not heard anyone say Miracle Monday, but it has been, I have a copy. It's been on my list to read.
Yeah. For crack it open.
Ages. This may be the moment. This is the moment.
It took me like a week or something. It's not long.
It's not a big book.
It's not long, and it's got one of the best. I won't spoil it for you, but the ending, when you read that ending, I've applied that ending to like my life, like my actual life, like Superman's solution of what he does at the end with the villain. I'm like, oh, that's really smart and compassionate. I should probably do that.
Maybe just so subtly copy and paste, maybe change a couple of names, and we might see it someday in a Superman book.
Well, I really want to do a proper like comic treatment of the book eventually, but it's got to be under the right circumstances.
That would be so cool. I think that would be real special. I hope that works out too. But Miracle Monday, we're doing that, sticking with that.
You know what? Let's do it. I feel a little, I don't want to be like, Johnny Come Lately or like feel like a poser saying that, because like Mark Waid has been evangelizing it for a long time.
No.
Right?
I think it's great because nobody has mentioned, and I think it's because maybe it's not a classic comic book that people have kind of left it out, but it is one that I keep reading about, keep hearing about, and is literally been on my stack to read for so long. So this is a
You and I
good
are going to
push.
talk about it. You're going to read it. I actually I have some feedback.
Okay, great.
I would love to talk to you about Miracle Monday. It's awesome.
Yes, that would be great. Well, Paul, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for what you're doing, what your whole team's doing. As a fan, I'm loving it. Please keep putting out all the books. I'll keep buying them.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.